Ladies and gentlemen, the best player in the chess world is a Norwegian man named Magnus Carlsen. But the next big thing in the chess world is a young man from India, and his name is Gukesh D. You see, it's currently May 2024. If you're watching in the future, hi. I hope the future is good. I hope an apocalypse didn't happen. But it's currently May 2024, and Gukesh is the next big thing because Gukesh won the Candidates Tournament, which means he will play for the World Chess Championship. He's only 17 years old. He's beaten every record thus far in terms of qualifying for the ultimate title in chess. And today, he played against Magnus Carlsen. They are playing in a Rapid and Blitz tournament as part of the Grand Chess Tour in Poland, in Warsaw. And I'm going to show you the game. It's an incredible game. It's an all-time classic. Gukesh absolutely stunned Magnus, and that's all I will say. Here we go. Now, this is a rapid game. They play 25-minute chess, which is a lot of time, but compared to normal time, normal classical chess, where they play for 3-4 hours, it's really not that much time. But 25, of course, being a good amount. Now, you may be surprised by the ratings. Gukesh is not a Rapid and Blitz specialist. Gukesh is a specialist in classical chess, whereas Magnus is a 17-time world champion, including the World Rapid Championship multiple times. So we have e4, we have e5, and Gukesh plays knight f3, knight c6, and he plays the Italian. Obviously, white has many choices. White can generally play the Spanish or the Italian. Bishop c4, and the first surprise actually happens on the fourth move. Magnus plays knight f6, counterattacking the pawn. And nowadays, the theory here is pawn to d3, and then bishop c5, and then c3, and then this is called the gioco piano, and, you know, the white plays various forms of the same, like 7 different setups, and black chooses, does he put the pawn on a6, or on a5, or on h6, or on g5, like, you know, etc. Gukesh fried livers Magnus Carlsen. Now, technically, this is not the fried liver. Technically, the fried liver is d5, pawn takes, knight takes, which is a big mistake. Knight takes f7. If you don't know what the fried liver is, after this video, I need you to go look up the fried liver. Some of you watching this probably don't know what it is, but most of you who have gotten into chess over the last few years have heard of the fried liver. Very potent, and the whole opening trap is based on the king going to the corner, and you checkmating your opponent in 8 moves. It would be like 9, technically, but... So that's the fried liver. Magnus plays d5. I was really sad he didn't play the Traxler, which is one of my favorite openings. He plays d5, pawn takes d5, and now the main line of this position, by far, like it's not close, is knight a5. Trying to target the bishop, and then obviously Gukesh had something here, otherwise he wouldn't have gone knight to g5. But he obviously enters this position with these types of ideas in mind. We have no idea what he would have played. Maybe he would have went check and back and queen f3, whatever. Magnus plays something that I have not seen played at the top level ever. Like, maybe in a Title Tuesday or some Blitz games, he plays b5, which is a move. Basically, black says, well, you blocked your own bishop, right? And so right now, I'm going to sneak another pawn over here so that if you take my knight, I take your bishop. And I basically say, despite being a pawn down, I am now the only person on the board who possesses the light-squared bishop, which is essentially the Elder Wand. And now my queen will go to d5, and you're going to get destroyed on the light squares. Which is why, after b5, Gukesh plays the best move. Now, fair warning, you are about to not understand the next 6 to 7 moves of this game, but that's okay, because you probably didn't understand the 6 or 7 moves already. You're not going to get this because this is what's called theory. Theory is like, you know, in geometry, you have proofs, right? You have theorems. There are things that have been tried again and again and again, and they are the best way to play. So the best way to play in this position is to put the bishop on the home square as if you are setting up the pieces once again. The reason for that is because you actually need this pawn protected. So if bishop to e2 is played, then in many lines there's going to be problems here, and the knight can come and go after the bishop. The knight can't do that if you go all the way back to f1. Also, if bishop d3, the pawn here becomes a target, right? So you have to go to f1 and basically say, yo, black, you got to take this pawn back, which he does. Now, the more common move in this position is queen d5. So Magnus showing some knowledge of really goofy fried liver systems. Magnus knows everything. Like, he knows all the theory. But so does Gukesh. Right, Gukesh comes back, he takes the pawn on b5. Some of you may be wondering, why didn't Gukesh just take the pawn on b5 to begin with? Because then queen d5, my friends. So you go to f1, you get a commitment move out of your opponent, and now you go to b5. Very dank, very meta, but that's okay. Black is a pawn down, but he's got a lot of open space. He's trying to play on his opponent's surprise, and now bishop to b7 simply defends the knight, and Gukesh plays d4. d4 is the best move. According to the engine, the move d4 is the top line, and the reason you play d4 is because you want your opponent to invest an entire turn taking the pawn, and in that time, you will defend your knight, and then castle, and then get your queen out, and then go for some sort of attack. So d4 is the best move Magnus takes. Both guys have not spent any time. In fact, they are gaining time. The clock is not broken. It's 25 minutes, and every time they make a move, they gain 10 seconds. Okay, just like you play 15-10 on chess.com, or 3+2, or 1+1, or 5+5 if you're a goblin. Castles. Bishop to e7. Now, the funny thing about the database, I checked the database in this position. Even though the computer likes it, humans suck at this position. Suck. So bad. The top line of the computer here is queen h5, threatening this, which would win. Black cannot castle, because then you would hang mate. g6, queen h6, black goes queen d7 and castles this way. And this is according to the engine. According to the engine, this position is better for white. But it is very difficult to see that, all right? That it's better for white. It's very easy to be like, wait a minute, I'm just going to get checkmated. I'm not saying the bishop has x-ray vision, but the knights are going to move. Which is why in this position, Gukesh goes here. So he spent about 3 minutes, because he gains a little bit of time, maybe 2.5 minutes, and he rejected queen h5, which is the top line. And the thing is, this is what Magnus makes really difficult for his opponents. He makes you walk a tightrope. If you make it to the end of the tightrope, you get front row tickets to Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks beat the Pacers. But if you don't, then you, I don't know, I don't know what happens, but you don't get that reward. I don't know, you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, or I mean, some godforsaken, I don't even know. I would not wish something like that upon, somebody. But anyway, you're a Bayern Munich fan. How about that? That with the offside call. I mean, my God. Knight to f3. And so Gukesh, unfortunately, is a Bayern Munich fan. And he goes back to the f3 square. And now castles, and Gukesh plays bishop c6. And as you can see from the last two moves, Gukesh is out of his comfort zone, right? He takes on d4, and he says, I'm up a pawn. I'm happy, right? Like, let's play this position. Now he spends another minute, so he's now 5 minutes down. Being down 5 minutes in chess is not a big deal, unless that's 20% of your time. That's a lot of time. One more thing about this position. Positions in king's pawn games, okay, positions in king's pawn games, where a side is down a pawn and the other side has a light squared bishop. Positions in king's pawn games, one side is up or down a pawn, white, black has a light squared bishop. We have entered Magnus's wheelhouse. Magnus got us to a position he is more comfortable in, despite being in a completely different system. What am I talking about? Check out how dank this is. Magnus likes to play the Spanish. In the Spanish, after knight f6 and castles and bishop to e7 and let's say rook to e1, what black likes to do is black likes to play d5. d5. And what that does is sends us into a marshal. Okay? And the marshal is an opening where black frequently puts a bishop on b7 and is a pawn down. And that is the way the marshal works. Like, let's say b5, bishop c2, d5, takes, knight d5, knight e5, do, and then bishop goes to b7. And this is very similar to what we have in this position, where, white is up a pawn, but the bishop is there. So despite being a totally different opening, he got himself into a position that he likes to play. Rook e8. And so now Gukesh is on the back foot. And the levels are showing. I mean, Gukesh, 17 years old, won the candidates, but there's levels to this, right? I mean, Magnus is what, like 50 years old at this point? What is he, like 30, 1990? He's 33. I mean, he's like double Gukesh's age, dude. I mean, Gukesh wasn't even alive, and Magnus was already 2,700. He has a lot of experience. Gukesh plays c3. c5. I mean, Magnus is just kind of kicking out the knight. Look at this. Now the knight goes to f5. For the life of me, I am just waiting for knight to f4 to happen, and I mean, I don't know how white is going to defend this position. If you play a move like pawn to f3 here, black moves the bishop, let's say like to g5, and if you try to initiate some exchanges, knight to e2 check, and you lose. You're just going to lose the bishop, right? Very dangerous position. Most humans here, and these guys are not human, they're like chess gods, you know, but most humans here would lose with white very quickly. Gukesh plays knight f5. He's looking to trade. Magnus says no thanks. I actually think your knight is going to be a useful target for my pieces. My bishop will come back out in a moment, so will my queen. Then I'll bring my second bishop, then I'll bring my knight, and then I'm going to bring my rook up and over. And just in case that wasn't enough, I also have another rook, which I might bring via a5, rook a6 this way, or rook c8, rook c6 via some sort of rook lift. Your extra pawn is meaningless. This is Gukesh's extra pawn. Yeah, nobody knows it's there. Yeah, nobody knows it's there. Knight to f3. Queen f6. Right? And now knight g3. And for a moment, it looks like white has these powerful horses protecting the king. Okay, Magnus plays h6. He could have played other moves. Here the computer really likes knight b6, trying to bring the rook to d8. And then maybe knight c4 as well. If the bishop moves targeting this, knight b6, very much liked by the computer. But okay, it's rapid. h6, we just don't let anything go to the g5 square. Gukesh plays queen c2. And the really unfortunate thing about this position for Gukesh is he's basically waiting for Magnus to throw a punch. White does not call the shots at all. At all. Like, white would be happy if you traded the rooks and you traded the queens, because then white would have 6 pawns versus 5 in all endgames. But yeah, you don't call the shots here. Magnus plays rook d. I told you he's just going to bring all his pieces. Gukesh plays rook d1. Gukesh now down 6 minutes. That's half his time. I mean, he just spent a massive amount. He's down 12 to 18 minutes, right? That's a massive amount of his time. 50% of his clock time is going to Magnus. Now Magnus plays this knight b6 move and begins engaging in an exchange. So we have rook takes, rook takes. Gukesh still has 2 pieces that have not moved. They haven't moved. They haven't entered the game. He's got to get those pieces in the game. And now there's a threat of bishop f3. So if you play bishop here, at the very least, I can get my pawn back, but I can also ruin your pawn structure. But I'm not even going to do that probably. I'll probably just play knight c4, looking to split your pawns like this. So Gukesh here plays knight e1. Undevelops the knight, puts it on the first rank. Maybe bishop e3, maybe knight to d3. He's getting it out of the way of this bishop. Magnus goes rook e8. Rook takes knight, devastating threat, and he's baiting Gukesh to bring out his bishop and into Magnus's knight, which arrives on c4. The attack is finally swirling. The only piece in the black position that hasn't done much is sitting on f8, but most of the pieces in white's position haven't done much, all right? So again, he's just waiting for Magnus to make a decision of how he's going to make the cut into the white territory. Now Gukesh has to put both knights on the back rank. I mean, this is futile stuff. I mean, it's looking really, really unpleasant. Magnus takes on e3. Knight takes e3. And now this move. This is a problem. You can't take it. It looks like a free pawn, but it has 2 really nasty ideas. Number 1, the bishop is going to go to the c5 square. It's going to come back alive. But number 2, it deflects the knight from the defense of the king. Queen g5 is a really difficult move, because if you play g3, this is a zesty fork. You lose. If you play knight e3, then the bishop is here. And my friends, it's what I told you. This is the worst nightmare. This is the Marshall, the opening that I showed you. Magnus specializes in these types of positions for black. So Gukesh is on the back foot. He has to play queen a4, trying to create a little bit of counterplay. Now, rook takes e3. A man after my own heart. The rook sacrificed by Magnus Carlsen. Rook to e3. Sacrificing the rook, removing the only active piece in the white position that is participating in the defense of the king. Pawn takes e3. And now bishop c5. Bishop to c5. Bishop e3 is a threat. Queen f1 is mate. How do you stop it? What you have to do here with white is you have to play queen e8 check. The king moves, you defend this, and then you bring out your knight. Because if bishop takes, I have rook f1. And I pin you like that. Gukesh thinks for a little while. And he says, what's the difference? Why can't queen e8? I mean, I'm just going to play knight to f3. Because knight f3 you still can't take. I play king h1, queen here, and he plays knight f3. And he loses the game. Because now there was a difference. you had to commit the queen to defend the pawn. Why? The difference is, if knight f3, bishop e3, king h1, bishop f3, there is queen e8. There is queen e8, and I win the bishop, which was the idea. But what he had missed is that after rook e3, fe3, bishop c5, if he goes here, takes, and king h1, Magnus sacrifices the queen. He takes the knight with the queen, and then the double bishop checkmate. Gukesh missed this concept way back here. And after takes, he went knight f3, and he sat there and went, what have I done? He could have just played queen e8, and the game would have kept going. Bishop f3, rook f1, and the game goes on. Maybe g f3, I don't know, maybe you try to survive this position. He plays here, and now he has to walk his king into the center. And Magnus is winning. And he finds the winning idea. Bishop c6 stops the queen from going to the back rank. Now, you can take, but then queen e8, check. So he deflects the queen away from there. If queen c4, bishop f3 is game over. It's completely lost. You just get mated. The queen goes to d1, protecting the knight. Now Magnus finds the best move again. Bishop to e4. He's going to d3. I mean, listen, Gukesh played 30 moves without moving his rook. You can't play the best player in the world without moving your rook. You're just going to lose. Bishop e4, bishop d3 is on the way. Gukesh, desperate final attempt. Queen to d7. Looking for queen e8 check. And Magnus calculated here the same concept as Gukesh. He calculated, do I just get out of the threat first, or do I make the aggressive check move? And just like Gukesh was like, do I make the defensive move, or do I play queen e8 check, right? All the way back there. Queen d7 is played by Gukesh. A good move, creating counterplay chances. And Magnus makes a mistake. Magnus makes a mistake. He plays king h7. But what's the difference? He had to give this check. And on king e1, you defend the fork by being aggressive. Queen b6, hitting b2, defending the bishop. Queen e8 check now no longer leads to anything. And after this, the threat of queen b2 is really, really bad. But there's an even more brutal threat. The more brutal threat is bishop d2, sacrificing the bishop two different ways to open up the diagonal for the queen. If you take with the king, queen here, queen c2 is mate momentarily. And if you take with the knight on d2, you lose even more stuff. You lose your knight, and you lose your rook. And then there is no perpetual check. So Magnus had to find bishop d3, followed by queen b6, sniping that opening shot with bishop to d2, but Gukesh's ferocious counterplay got Magnus to commit his king. But what if I told you this position is completely lost for white, if not for one move? Position's completely lost. Bishop d3 is on the way. Magnus missed the move Gukesh found. Gukesh found the move Magnus missed. Courageous is an understatement for the move that Gukesh plays in this position. With the attack swirling in front of his king, the rook that can't even get into the game because of bishop d3 being on the way, this position Gukesh finds king to e2. And there is a threat to this move. He wants to take the bishop. He protects the knight, and bishop d3 is no longer a thing because he would take on e3 and he would run right back, and there is no way to check the king. I will bring my queen to protect. You can play queen b2. I play rook to e1. There is nothing. I am surrounded by the love and support of my pieces. King to e2. Oh my, Magnus has to dip out of the black position, but it's still losing for white. If not for one move, and one move only, which Gukesh finds. Rook to e1, the first move of the rook of the entire game. 32 moves it took. And the idea of rook e1 is you run the king to safety. You put the king in the center of the board, but the rook comes to help. The major difference is if you had gone to d1, queen g6 is a problem. Because if you try to protect yourself, bishop f3, pawn f3, queen g1, and queen f2 is mate because of this annoying pawn on c4. Rook e1 stops queen g6 because the king escapes. You lose the pawn on g2, but your king is safe for a moment. And that's exactly what happens in the game. Rook e1, Magnus plays queen g6. King goes to d1, both guys under 2 minutes on the clock. Queen g2 played by Magnus. This is mate. That's mate. The knight is hanging. The pawn is hanging. And all of those pawns are hanging. How is Gukesh going to defend this position? By once again finding the only move, taking the bishop. Queen takes f3 is a fork, but rook to e2. And now Magnus plays the one final attempt at complicating the position, bishop to e3. Queen f1 is threatened. What do you do if you're playing with white? If you try to unpin yourself, you fall off a cliff. It's mate. So what do you do? What if you play queen b5? Queen f1, and you get mated. Okay, we learned our lesson. We're just going to keep the queen on the d file, queen d6. Then I'm going to play queen e4, and you cannot defend two diagonals at the same time. So queen b1 is checkmate. What do? Probably, I don't know, rook e1. Then I'll play f5 with my safe king, and I'll march the pawn down, and you will lose. So what is the move? What is the move? Well, the move that saves the day is pawn to b3. And black does not have time. If black plays pawn takes b3, I just take back, and that's it. That's it. You have nothing. This is a threat, queen d3. So let's say you play g6, then I will start pushing my own pawn. You're no longer threatening me anymore. There was one final trick, which is if you play this right away, and then f5, and then you take the bishop, like let's say queen e3, yeah, take, oops. But Gukesh is too strong to fall for such things, which is why in this position, Magnus Carlsen was forced to repeat moves, and the players shook hands and made a draw by 3-move repetition with less than 1 minute on their clocks. This was a crazy game. This game was so close to being over. Once Magnus sacrificed the rook, activated the bishop, Gukesh blundered under pressure with the king in the center of the board. And Magnus found every resource. All Gukesh could have done, only thing, is go as far into Magnus's position as possible and create the possibility to make a mistake. And Magnus here had to be completely cold-blooded, finding the defensive moves while leaving his king in the center of the board. He missed it. Gukesh's defensive tenacity pays off, and he finds a string of only moves to clutch out a draw right on the brink of collapse. What a gangster move, king e2, and then rook to e1. Spotting this defensive concept, walking the king to d1, and just as he was about to get mated, the rook hits the bishop. The rook hits the bishop, and Magnus didn't have to take on g2, but then Gukesh would have just activated his rook. He made things practically difficult for the best player in the world, and he clutches a draw. What a battle. The candidate versus the former world champion and the world #1. What a battle. Great stuff from Gukesh, who could have just fell over. I mean, he was under pressure from the 10th move of this game. This was a terrible position to play. Terrible. I mean, it was under so much pressure, but he fought, he played fast, he played confidently. Magnus was just maybe a moment away from clutching it with bishop to d3, but Gukesh made things complicated. What a hold. And Gukesh won both his other games today against Prague and against... I'm blanking. I'm blanking on the name, and I don't want to say something incorrect. They are in the middle of day 2 of 6 of the Rapid and Blitz tournament in Poland. And if you watch this in the future, obviously the tournament ended. But a very fun game. And we will have more Magnus versus Gukesh battles as the tournament goes through to the Blitz phase. Very exciting stuff. Very cool to see Gukesh playing more Rapid and Blitz, because that is not the format that he's the best in. But he's doing very well, and he's raising his level in all the formats. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.